knows best.
Oh, it's a Tuesday. No, it's not. It's Monday. Jeez. Oh, boy. It's a Monday. The day I've been waiting for. Well, welcome to the show, everybody. We're going to have a great time this week. All starting tonight on the 17th day of July, 2023. And I'll just tell you a little bit about what we're doing. Jay Gulinello is in the studio tonight. I think that he hasn't been here since late May. I'll talk to him about that for sure. But it feels like a while. He's been off. Last time he was on, it was right before he went to that big convention in Tennessee where Jay Dyer and a bunch of our other friends were there, Kathy O'Brien, and then from there, I mean, everybody's just been so busy. And Jay's doing a lot of great things, and obviously we're always busy over here on the show, and he's going to help me kick off a good week because we are going to be talking a little bit about body positivity tonight, whatever the hell that means. Body positivity in 2023, it's body positivity, period, because when the hell do we ever learn about that shit? It is essentially the art of ignoring the 900-pound gorilla in the room, you being the gorilla. Okay, so that's the whole thing. Ignore it. Everything's fine. Just keep eating the Oreos. You're fine. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. Just keep eating. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. But also, I mean, there's so much. We didn't get into the C40 cities. We didn't get into. It all ties into central bank digital currencies. We're the complete reversal of milk. The marketing for milk that we all grew up with in the 80s, 90s, and probably before all that too has completely been reversed, and it just goes hand in hand with so much food freedom. Which, if you don't have that, you have nothing. And we are, we're so easily. It's so easy for us to tie all this together, and it must be done. All of your calls and all of your super chats, they will be answered in turn like we usually do when Jay is in. So whatever I have in the notes tonight, I just know to plan for at least 35% more shit, and it's all going to be good. So we'll get to him in just a second. Tomorrow night we're going to go through just some articles and call-in topics just to fill in the Tuesday. It's going to be a full 2 hours because Anthony's in Seattle, therefore there is no band practice. But I want to get a little bit. I want to get a little bit of the Long Island serial killer material on the books because on Friday, for about 20 to 30 minutes, Matt and I will be receiving a phone call, a remote Zoom call from Shane Cashman, who has been covering this for years. So I'd love to just be able to do a little bit of a crash course on this with Shane Cashman, someone who knows it better than I, at least. Then we can take calls and talk about serial killers and all that fun stuff. And because in the end of August, we have a really great true crime guest that's going to be coming on, Mike King from Profiling Evil on YouTube. That's on August 31st, so I didn't want to wait for this until then. Maybe it could be a bonus question until then. And in the meantime, I'd love to have the Zells back on and do a few other things there, too. Got to keep up with this stuff. I've been bad with this in the past, like, with the whole Idaho murders. That's something I could definitely I can talk with Mike King about later on in the summer. But we got to do a little bit more of this. It is, it's just incredible sociological topics in general, because I think that as we were talking about when Sons of Sam came out on Netflix, and I was talking about that series with Frank and Jim Zell, I had taken so many notes for that series that came out on Netflix, and what I was coming to the conclusion of is that when you consider the time and you consider the government programs, you consider the media, you consider just the change in culture that was going on, and how it seemed like we were all it was a breeding ground for serial killers. And I started thinking, well, have we gotten better or have we gotten worse from the 1970s onward? And I mean, objectively, we've become a far sicker mentally ill society. That's on top of just the normal traumas, media traumas, and then pharmaceutical. There's just so much. So I am coming from the standpoint where I believe there are probably so many serial killers on the loose, but it's just not as headline grabbing. I bet you that a lot of it is stifled. A lot of it is hush hush. I bet you that it's just like it's all over the place. That's just from me. It's an opinion. Then we'll see how it shakes out. So on Wednesday night is going to be incredible. Alaric the Barbarian, very popular on Twitter, history writer, fantastic guy, and I love his work. We're going to be talking about the Dark Ages, and that might actually overlap with some commentary on the Age of Exploration. Mainly, were the Dark Ages really all that dark, and what is the truth about the dark? We're going to get red-pilled on the Dark Ages on Wednesday night. That's on the 19th. On the 20th, in studio, Reverend Bill Bean. He's an exorcist, demonic possession. We're going to be talking about all that stuff in studio. See how that all goes. It's our first booking on that subject, and I've got a hell of a lot of questions. Forgive the no pun intended. Hell of a lot. It's so much going on here. And then I already told you on the 21st on Friday, Matt will be in, and I think we're going to be getting a call with Shane Cashman on Zoom for the Long Island serial killer talk. So all that this week, so much more next week, and it just never stops. And remember, we only have, what are we? We're about 10 days or so away, 13 days or so away from 14 days from the end of the month. In August, on Wednesday nights, quite frankly, book club is coming back. And I implore you guys and gals, if you are already a monthly sponsor, go out and buy The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson and get ready for book club. It's going to be so good. I know a lot of people, at least a handful, have reached out to say, Frank, I bought it and I already started reading it. I'm gripped. Yeah, well, it's gonna be amazing, especially once we digest it in that group setting in book club. There's nothing like it. It's the best reading of a book you'll ever do because you absorb it so much more. You retain it. It's the best experience I've had so far reading books. And if you have not become a sponsor of the show, you should. Go to quitefrankly.tv. Go to sponsor us. You can sponsor right through quitefrankly.tv for as little as $2 a month. But if you go to Subscribestar, the cheapest there is $5 a month. It doesn't matter what tier you get in at. Wherever you go, on Subscribestar, quitefrankly.tv, Patreon that's still there, and even Foxhole. Everybody gets, if you're a monthly subscriber, you get the unlisted links for both book club, other special broadcasts, the Sunday streams. It comes right to you, and that's exclusive. And then about a month or so after the sessions are over, we put it all public, but there's nothing like being there. All right. That's it. Let's jump in. And let's start the grab bag up. Jay Gulinello is just chilling out. I might drag him in for a couple of these articles because, I don't know, it's all just so nuts. Here's the first one. Oh, there's Jay. The hell you think you're doing, Jay?
Sorry.
Get the hell off the screen. So I don't know what the hell he thinks he's doing jumping out like that. Headline, Great White Sharks spotted near famous nude beach. San Diego lifeguards warn. Now, we keep just talking about it with Grace, talking about it just in general. What the hell is with all of the ocean gore lately? It's almost like they want us staying out of the ocean. Well, Southern California lifeguards said they spotted at least 3 juvenile... Is that for real? No, maybe that's a real thing. 3 juvenile great white sharks off the coast of Black's Beach on Friday and are warning beachgoers to exercise caution in the area. San Diego Fire Rescue Department posted a photo to the agency's Facebook page of a sign that was to be temporarily installed on the beach, warning of the marine life. According to the agency, sharks were feeding on the carcass of sea lion and were not exhibiting aggressive behavior. There's been no other reported sightings of the sharks that were thought to be 6, 8, and 9 feet long. According to the San Diego Tourism Authority, The area is famous for being one of the largest nude beaches in North America and is known for its giant swells. Get it? Swimming is not generally recommended year-round due to the rough surf conditions created by cliffs. Locals said that the powerful waves make the beach a destination for experienced surfers, especially during the winter. So, if you're out there on the West Coast and you are going nude beaching anytime soon, just stay in the shallow end, because you might not be coming home with all of your parts. That's what they want you to know about. All right, here's another one. Now, oh man, I got to bring Jay in for this one. Jay, listen to this. Here's a headline from NBC News. I'll put you back on the screen. A sailor and his dog found after 3 months stranded in the Pacific. Another ocean horror story. Phew. He said a stranded sailor and his dog have been rescued in the South Pacific Ocean after months at sea, rescuers told the Australian media over the weekend. The sailor, Tim Shattuck, 51, and Bella, the dog, departed from La Paz, Mexico, 3 months ago. A month into his journey, a storm struck his white catamaran, wiping out all the electronics, according to 9 News. He says he and Bella survived 3 months at sea eating raw fish and drinking rainwater. They were rescued by Mexican tuna trawler over the weekend, 9 News reported. I have been through a very difficult ordeal at sea, Shattuck told the channel, adding that he had fishing and other survival gear with him. Oh, that's good. There's no other way he would have survived.
No.
I'm just needing rest and good food because I've been alone at sea a long time, he said. I have not had enough food for a long time. A doctor who treated Shattuck on the trawler told 9 News that the sailor had normal vital signs. Shattuck and Bella were spotted last week by helicopter accompanying a tuna trawler, which was on its way back to Mexico, according to 9 News. It was unclear when Shattuck first left Mexico and where he and Bella were rescued. The trawler was on the way back to the west coast of Mexico, where the Shattuck would receive further care. Damn.
How long was that again? I missed the first part.
3 months.
Wow.
3 months at sea. And he has nothing but just whatever he can fish with and rainwater.
It's an interesting experiment. You know, you can't experiment on humans because it's unethical, but this guy did an experiment. Whole food diet, fish, water. That's it, 3 months. And the doctor said his vitals were normal. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you're getting your essential fatty acids, you're getting your essential amino acids, and you're getting hydrated.
And what can you say about the rainwater that you're collecting in the middle of the Pacific? I mean, I don't know how far out he was.
Right.
If a tuna trawler was still, I mean, it has to be within range. If he was somewhere out, I don't know, God knows. I mean, it sounds like the real issue here is that everything that he had on the boat that would be able to connect him to the outside world is shot.
Right.
Including the ability to sail. It seems like he was just adrift.
He's got a lot of guts collecting rainwater. That's illegal in a lot of states.
Well, I mean, to hell that. He says Shattuck said he avoided sunburn by sheltering his boat's under his boat's canopy, eating raw fish, and drinking rainwater. He said if you get sunburn, that affects your ability to regulate your body temperature, said Mike Tipton, physiology professor at the Extreme Environment Laboratory, University of Portsmouth. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so 3 months at sea. There you have it. Just incredible. All right, what else do we have here? Well, Jay, this is for you too. Woman with a chicken bone. A woman with a chicken bone stuck in her throat dissolves it by drinking Coke. A New Zealand woman who had a small chicken bone lodged in her throat claims she was prescribed an interesting remedy by an emergency room doctor. Lots of Coke. And I'm talking about the soft drink. Beth Brash recently sat down with New England Magazine Stuff to tell the unusual story of how she managed to get rid of the chicken bone stuck in her neck. It all started when she visited her favorite Wellington restaurant and tried their new chicken dish. To be fair, the staff there asked if she was all right with bones, and having visited multiple countries where serving meat on the bone was considered normal, she wasn't put off by it. Unfortunately, while eating the spicy dish, the young woman started experiencing a kind of tickling in her throat, which turned out to be a small piece of chicken bone. Although alarmed by the sensation in her throat, Brash decided not to make a scene at the restaurant and even fought through the pain the entire weekend, assuming it would eventually go away. It didn't, so she went to the emergency room first thing on Monday morning. She was informed that she did have a small piece of chicken bone lodged in her throat, but the ENT specialist told her it wasn't cause for concern. The spicy chicken aficionado was relieved to learn that her situation wasn't serious, but she still expected to undergo an invasive procedure to have the bone removed. Instead, the ENT department simply advised her to drink 4 cans of sugary Coca-Cola to dissolve the piece of bone. Jay, how does this survive in our I know our stomachs are just incredible incubators that can withstand our own bodily acids, but man.
Well, this doesn't sound like it was in her stomach.
No, I know, but still,
you know what I mean. But there's a huge difference because the esophagus isn't actually an acidic environment. So this sounds like it was somewhere in the.
Right in here.
Yeah. So I mean, it wouldn't be in her actual stomach where the stomach acid could dissolve it.
Well, what I'm saying is, the fact that this Coke is going to dissolve the bone.
Yeah.
The fact that Coke goes down into our stomachs.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
And listen, every once in a while, I'll have a glass of Coke at a restaurant once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
That or a Dr. Pepper, as you know.
Yeah.
It's been a while, but still, people drink a lot of this shit.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and the fact that it dissolves bone should tell you something about how much you actually want to have. It's phosphoric acid that generally reacts with things. So it's interesting that's. I had a laugh at the advice.
It worked.
Because that was the first question I was actually going to ask you. Is that did she have to drink Coca-Cola for X amount of time? You know, for like 3 weeks or something to dissolve it, or but it just sounds like 4 cans did the trick.
Advised her to drink 4 cans of sugary Coca-Cola to dissolve the piece of bone. She was surprised by the remedy, but she went to the supermarket, bought 4 Cokes. To her amazement, she started feeling better the next morning, and by the following day, she is already back to normal. Quote, that's human Drano for you for body. That human Drano for your body for clearing it out. That corrosiveness. That's what I found really interesting, Brash said. Dr. Byron Betty, chair of general practice in New Zealand, told stuff.co.nz that she had never come across this doctor-prescribed remedy before, but added that it is known fact that Coca-Cola is an acidic drink that can even break down tooth enamel. It's not exactly the kind of treatment a doctor would prescribe, but if it can prevent invasive procedures, then it's worth a shot. I've also heard, Jay, that Coca-Cola can take the rust off of bicycles.
Yes.
That it's used by emergency roadside services to take blood off of streets.
Yeah. The phosphoric acid reacts with the iron oxide in rust, and that's how it removes rust. So I was just interested you think about human bone health, and the body can regulate blood pH levels, but when you're dumping a ton of phosphoric acid into your system, it just really makes you think about that. Because I remember at NTA we talked about the phosphoric acid in soda and how it might not be such a great thing for bone mineral density, but this is just like a sort of really acute case of that, so I'm okay with it. But I just laughed because it's such a strange prescription. 4 Cokes, call me in the morning.
Yeah, I know. No, it's serious.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. This, on the other hand, is going to leave you absolutely horrified.
Can't wait.
This is the leader of the National Education Association, the largest teachers union in the country. And she was speaking a few days ago. This is from Susie1776. She uploaded it on Twitter. Said the members of this union have voted to push critical race theory in all 14,000 school districts. And I guess this is originating from Tommy Robinson News. But you've got to listen to this and embrace yourself.
I can hear Chief Seattle crying out to us, urging us to remember when you know who you are, when your mission is clear, and you burn with the inner fire of an unbreakable will. No cold can touch your heart. No deluge can dampen your purpose. And yea, you are the stars in the darkness. Your light will not be dimmed.
A teachers union.
Yikes.
It goes on.
Your purpose drive you in a righteous fight for freedom because you know who you are.
Okay, go fuck yourself.
What is she talking about?
Listen,
Math?
we are being dragged down to the depths by these crazy harridan wenches.
Wow.
It's almost always women that have been brought to this level. And I don't know. I mean, that is a teachers union president. I expect her to be wearing religious garb.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just insane.
Well, I mean, that's ideology.
Yeah, man. And of course, that's not separate from anything that we're talking about tonight.
No. Nope. Not at all, actually.
Holy shit. So, I mean...
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You want to talk about something that'll get a bone out of your throat. This woman will definitely dissolve bones. I'm sure she does that a lot at home.
Bone crusher.
Bone crusher. I ain't never scared. Okay, well, that's it. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. That was the pre-show, and now we are getting this one kicked off. Please do me a favor. Couple of things. If you are on YouTube, if you are on Rumble, anywhere that has a like button, please hit it. It's like walking into a room and turning on the light switch. Just do it. It helps out in such a great way. It costs nothing except a nanosecond of your time. Please like and share it. I put all the links out there across all the, quite frankly, socials, so you can get it out for me and help me out to get more and more people watching this show than ever before. And another thing, I'm going to keep saying this. I have to keep reminding myself. Whenever something happens on the show that you think is either hilarious, poignant, just something that really represents what the show is all about, that you think should be made into a clip, just write down the timestamp. Write down the timestamp and send it in to us. You can either email it to us or you can go into the Gilded and you can drop it into the Quite Clippy chat room. Please be a highlight spotter for us, because I can throw those highlights, those clips over to our editing crews, and they can, which is one guy, and you can and he can just clip and we can just get this stuff out. If you want to help the show grow, help us be spotters for highlights. It is we just need volunteers, because we're not a big crew, and we need a lot of help. So that's it. Like and share and send in timestamps whenever you see something awesome happening with the show. Go ahead, do it. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is Max Ancaparato at 12,060 feet. You can get as high as I am by watching the Quite Frankly podcast.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's run!
Yes, I know. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. It is the 17th day of July 17th, 2023, and we've got a lot of great stuff to do. Hey, you know, Jay, I talked about it a little bit as I was just previewing tonight's show, but how did that thing in Tennessee go? I saw, I mean, when you got there, you showed me some of the stage crew setting up. It looked like a wonderful place to do a talk on anything.
Yeah.
So how was the overall experience? How was your set?
It was great, man. I mean, so I was there, ended up doing two completely separate events on Friday. And then the other event was a Saturday, Sunday, and I spoke on Sunday. And man, it was just incredible. The factory in Franklin, Tennessee was where the pictures that I sent you. What a collection of people, Frank. So, you know, I didn't know how I was going to be received, because I was the only health nutrition sort of speaker. You know, people like Patrick Byrne were there, right? Like, you know, so sharing the stage with someone like that was just so interesting for me. I've never had that experience before. But but I feel like I was really well received. Because it was a 2-day event where people were just speaking one after the other. There was very little transition. Sometimes there was a lot of people in the room, and sometimes there were less. Just pure happenstance. And so I got lucky. I had a good crowd. They were into it, and man, they responded, and I took a few unofficial polls about, how much did they know of the material that I presented, because I want to tailor this for the future. And a lot of people were unaware of this stuff, and I think my whole mission is education. And so I kind of just fell in love with just traveling around and talking to people everywhere I go. And I've already calculated, I think I've been to, including the states that I live in, I've been to 7 states this year already. So it's really been fun, and I kind of can't wait to do it more and more as time goes on. And sharing the stage with people who have been on this show before was a blast. Jay Dyer and I think you've had Patrick Byrne on, and Kathy O'Brien, and it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Did you get to talk to Kathy?
I didn't. No, she was on the day before me, and we just never ran into each other. It was a huge venue.
But I know that you spoke with Jay Dyer a little bit. No, now who was before you and who was after you during the day?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. There was a guy named Jay Slay right before me. He's just a Tennessee dad who started. He created a camp for men, like basically for men to help like reclaim masculinity from the people who think masculinity is toxic. So it was actually really good, because a lot of the things he talked about were decline in testosterone, not from a health perspective, just in general masculinity. Yeah. So that was who was on before me. I can't actually remember. Actually Alex Zek I think was right after me. So it was a great. I watched almost everybody. So I watched Kathy O'Brien speak, Patrick Byrne, everybody. I really enjoyed sitting up in the balcony with, frankly, who was there, Gina from South Carolina.
Oh, nice.
So she was there. We met in person and had a great time. What a fantastic person. She supported me that whole weekend. She went to both events just to support, and there were a lot of Franklies there, man. You were well represented at this event, and I wish I could remember the names of the other people. I did remember them at one point, but it's been over a month and I forget. But I even signed a show poster with all the faces on there, and I signed my name on top of Jay Dyer's face, because she told your audience member told me to. I said, where should I sign? She goes, sign it on Jay Dyer's face. And I said, okay, fine.
Fine. Goodbye, Jay.
Yeah, see you later, Jay. I erased Jay Dyer from existence. But yeah, it was really great, man. And again, you were well represented, and people came from that woman came from 2 states away, I think, just because she heard about the event from a few people, and then she heard about me, talking about it on this show. So it was great.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
And that was you were on the Meat Mafia podcast. Did you do anything with them?
So yeah, absolutely. Their event was Friday night at a place called Bitcoin Park. And that was a health-centered event. So they had other doctors there. They had alternative healthcare system CEOs there. I mean, they had farmers. So
this is a separate event?
Completely separate event.
So it
just happened. So weird, man. It just happened to be on the same weekend, 20 miles away from each other. So I said, well, I mean, I was asked to speak at both. How could I pass it up? So I did. And the Meat Mafia, if you the clips that are pinned to the top of my Instagram page, it was essentially like what you and I are doing right now, only in a live format with an audience of about 50 people in a very small, intimate little room at Bitcoin Park. And they just filmed it and they put the clips up, and you can watch the whole video up on YouTube at the Meat Mafia podcast. And it was great. We had a blast.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're getting around, and it always feels whenever you talk about it afterwards, it always sounds like it goes swimmingly. So.
Yeah, man, it's
nice.
It's just influencing people to think for themselves is really what it's all about, and you can see it in people. When people come up to me afterwards and ask questions, genuine questions, that's what it's all about, education. So,
well, speaking of thinking, I want to get into a few things. I want to talk about neurotoxins. I want to talk about a few things here, and what we're going to do to open that up. And speaking of Coke, I told you so, I guess. Everybody gets to say once again. Here is what broke around June 29th, maybe a day before, but this is the one I grabbed from Now Digital, has been syndicated by MSN. Here's the headline. Cancer Research Agency to officially now list artificial sweetener aspartame as a possible carcinogen neurotoxin. So for the longest time, let's see, aspartame will soon be declared a possible carcinogen, by a leading health body, according to reports, used in thousands of edible products, including diet fizzy drinks, ice cream, chewing gum, and one of the most popular common artificial sweeteners is said to be a cancer risk to humans for the first time in the International Agency for Research on Cancer. The World Health Organization's cancer research arm, sources have said. Now, for years, people were warning about aspartame, and we were getting the same old, oh, hush, hush, hush. And so, I mean, talk a little bit about what kind of work have you done on aspartame, and then maybe just even some most prevalent neurotoxins that people don't even pick up on, because it had a lot of attention drawn to it over the years, but still, this is Diet Coke, this is everything.
Yeah. I haven't read this study directly, so I've seen some conflicting, and what I always do, you know that, I always try to represent the evidence as it exists, right? And I have my biases, and I think aspartame is definitely a detriment to human health for multiple reasons. One, if you're only swapping out an artificial sweetener for sugar, you're also not retraining your taste buds to that hyper sweet taste, right? So that's one of the downsides. In terms of its neurotoxicity, I actually found a really interesting paper that actually talked about aspartame, saccharin, and sucralose. And this was animal research, but they found that it actually can create lipid peroxides in the brain. So what that means is essentially when fats become oxidized, that's a problem because fats are what make up cell membranes, and when the cell membrane composition and function becomes compromised, the cell becomes dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And so this is happening in the brain of animals when exposed to normal amounts of these 3 artificial sweeteners. And so what they determined was long-term consumption of artificial sweeteners may have harmful effects on cognition and specifically areas of the hippocampus and cellular integrity in the hippocampus. So when it comes to cancer, I really look at the mitochondria. We've probably talked about the mitochondria 100 times. The only thing I've heard about this study, and again, I haven't read it myself, is a few people pointed out they used really high doses, so that might not be as applicable. Okay, fine. Even if that's the case, I have a litany of things that I'm concerned about with aspartame and the other artificial sweeteners, none of which, if you scroll back on my Instagram feed, you'll actually find an original article I wrote about how aspartame came to be and how the FDA sort of finagled it to market. Donald Rumsfeld, believe it or not, had something to do with bringing aspartame to market.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
I remember that.
Yeah, so there's a whole huge background, but yeah. So the long story short is I haven't read this exact study. So I'm just going to refrain from commenting on that exact study, but I have a ton of concerns, and I'm actually happy for once that these governing bodies are saying, hey, this is a problem and we should look into it. Even if this label of potentially carcinogenic does nothing else, it will now spur further research into the matter. And what I just told you just came from a 2018 paper about neurotoxicity. So that's a serious concern.
It is, but they've been putting this in I know, like Coke products and things like that since the 1980s.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I don't understand is what is going on? Is it really just profits? Is it really just profit that it took 40 years to say, hey, there's a possibility that this may not be good for human consumption? Why the 40-year lag just to at least say that there's a possibility now?
It's hard to know, but you wouldn't be shocked, and your audience probably wouldn't be shocked, but I mean the amount of politics that goes into food safety would really shock the layperson, because and honestly, it shocked me when I got into the field, because again, I thought I was just going into a hard science, right? You do the experiment, and if bad things occur, you write down the bad things that occur and you put it out there, and then when enough of a collection of literature accumulates that says this potentially detrimental effect, like glyphosate, and that'll segue into the next thing, because we hear about glyphosate and how it's toxic for the gut bacteria. Well, I found a recent paper that shows that it crosses the blood-brain barrier. So that's going to be my next on the list of neurotoxic molecules, right? So the answer is, yeah, I mean, most of the time it's political, because from my perspective, if I was running an organization like the FDA or the USDA or the World Health Organization, I would always want to err on the side of caution. Why are we just allowing these things to market without proper safety testing? Or, in the case of the FDA, very often safety testing that's paid by the companies that produce the product. Pharmaceutical companies are famous for this in user fees. They pay user fees. So you're asking the FDA, hey, how safe is my product? Here's all the money to research it. What do you think is going to happen? So to me, this might just be also an indication that there's some literature out there that exists that has sort of created that tipping point where now they want to start to cover their asses and say, well, yeah, this may be carcinogenic. So what I would tell the public is now start to pay attention to some of the future research that comes out about aspartame, because very often this is how they cover their trail.
Right.
So
yeah, no, it's well, hey, when it comes to glyphosate, that's something that's popping up more and more now too. In fact, whenever you are away from the show for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, there's always just so much that comes across my way from doctors talking about mineral and vitamin deficiencies and how that is, they make huge claims. I wish we can go through all of them. Cancer itself is something that I want to do with you again one night.
Sure.
Because you think about all this stuff that we're eating and drinking, and for all of the, and I was watching a little bit of the All-Star game, the baseball All-Star game. It was last week or the week before, I forget when it was. I got home and by the time I got home, it was just about time for the 7th inning stretch. And what they did during the All-Star game was there's this crazy, they get everybody in the stadium involved. And they do this whole thing, stand up to cancer. Right. And everybody in the stadium is holding up a sign of someone in their life who has it, or people they know who, people they're remembering, people who are in the fight, people who are recovering, whatever. It runs the gamut. The whole broadcast crew, whatever. I look at all of these things, and I think this is the second time that they've done it, and it goes on and on and on. The commercials, it's all cancer. And I understand, they're trying to raise awareness, trying to raise money, but you know what? I mean, how much more awareness can be raised? It is clear we're not winning the fight. It is clear we're not winning.
No.
And it only gets, so, I mean, what is it? It's just, that is some scary ass shit, man, to think that you could be doing everything right and still you can get clobbered with this. It's just, I feel like we're just steeped in this highly toxic sludge constantly.
So do you want the cynical Jay answer, or do you?
Listen, I think it's a cynical situation.
Yeah, it is.
So you don't have to put a happy face on that.
No, it's an industry. It's the cancer industry, and hospital after hospital builds these 7-story buildings. But before I was sort of kicked out of my hospital, they had just opened this brand new cancer wing. Meanwhile, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the researchers that are doing the on the ground work, the entire paradigm is wrong. They're looking at cancer as a genetic disease, and it's not. And we knew this a long time ago. Otto Warburg knew this. And when the human genome was, not the human genome, when DNA was discovered by Watson and Crick, that sort of created this cottage industry. And if you look at most diseases, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit in terms of the body positivity movement, everything is now blamed on genes. Everything is genetic. So profoundly disempowering. And I have a quick anecdote about that, because I've even now, I made a public post about obesity and how it's, in my opinion, it's not serving anybody to label it genetic like they do with cancer. And I actually I didn't even realize, a former professor of mine follows me on social media, and she took exception to what I said. So this was a very strange situation for me to be arguing with a professor I profoundly respect. Mm-hmm. Never had that happen to me before. But I stood my ground, because while she may be incredibly talented and has taught me so much about biochemistry, I was coming from the angle of the social aspect of disease, that we have normalized disease to the point now where we're just accepting it as a fait accompli. This is just the way it is, and now you need all these industries to provide these pharmaceutical interventions in order to, in other words, is your body, you're a cancer patient, is your body deficient in chemotherapy drugs? we've got this whole paradigm that we are now deficient in some other intervention. But I'm telling you that obesity, cancer, all of these can be traced back to metabolic pathologies. And that's where I think it's empowering to tell people that. But it also requires a bit of tough love. It's a bitter truth to say that, well, your lifestyle probably contributed to this, right? See, genetics takes you off the hook for everything that you do. As you said, I can't remember, I don't even think we were on air. I think you were just saying, oh no, you were. It was your intro. You just sit back, it's genetics, keep eating your Oreos. Mm. That's how you get obese and cancer. You know, you have these evolutionary mismatches in terms of like lowercase e evolution, just the evolution of human biology, and how we are not suited for a modern lifestyle. The chronic sitting, the light exposure, the food, the EMFs, the whole thing. It's a toxic soup. So they want to push us in the genetic direction because they have the solution for that. If it's a metabolic condition, obesity or cancer, well, guess what? Then it becomes much more in your control, and lifestyle factors are profoundly effective. They're also incredibly cheap, and nobody can really profit off them. So now you can begin to see why the paradigm is constructed the way it is. I know you know this, and most of your audience knows this, but it's incredibly important to point out that this is very often done on some levels intentionally, and on other levels, the people working in the cancer centers, they really want to find a cure for cancer.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Absolutely do.
I don't doubt it. But
their paradigm is wrong, and I've said his name on the show before. If we do a whole cancer episode, your audience should look into the work of Thomas Seyfried at Boston College. That man probably knows more about cancer than anybody on earth, and he is adamant about it being a metabolic disease, and he has done some amazing experiments.
No matter what the kind of cancer it is.
Yes, 99.9%. You know, and some people will say, well, what about children? Yes. Well, so here's the thing, right? So the maternal environment also dictates this. So if the maternal environment, if the mother has a metabolic issue going on, that could create a polymorphism in a gene that could then drive the cancer process. So you know what I mean? So it's not black and white, but if we could wipe out cancer from the metabolic point of view, cancer would be an afterthought. It would still exist, but it would be the rarest of the rare. And couldn't we all agree that would be a good thing?
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that's I'm sorry, that's a really long-winded way of getting around to your answer, but it is that's why the body positivity movement, I think, is so bad for people. And we see headlines on Cosmopolitan, you know, Cosmo has a headline and they show clinically obese women, and the headline is, "This is healthy." That's the headline. This is healthy. And I pulled like a couple of other headlines, like NBC News just the other day. A body mass index in range considered overweight or even obese is not necessarily associated with a higher risk of death. Well, a 2019 paper showed us that less than 1% of obese people are metabolically healthy. So I mean, that messaging, who is that serving? The pharmaceutical companies, maybe, but it's not, or the food manufacturers of Oreos and all the other ultra-processed foods.
Honestly, Jay, even sociopolitically, I don't know who it serves, because it's, if you want to, it has become a very political, it's very factioned off. Mm-hmm. People who are just, they live this way, they embrace it in a certain way, they're carrying a banner for one faction or another, and it is always very political, ideologically driven.
Yes.
But if the end result is people living shorter, unhealthier, unproductive lives, I mean, and even just functioning less and less, then what the hell? Who rule? It's just like ruling over ashes at that point.
Yeah, and Frank, I mean, this is what I mean about telling the tough truths, because all I care about is helping people stay away from chronic disease. And if you're going to hate me for saying that obesity is not healthy, then okay. But if you take my message to heart and you do something about it, then I'll be hated. It's fine. I don't mind. I don't have to be loved by everybody. You know, I mean, I really don't mind. But I'm not going to get involved in telling you the sweet little lies and the things you want to hear now at the expense of your long-term health. And I've said this on your show before. That's literally my job, is to tell you the truth. And it's every other clinician's job as well. But some people want to get more, and this was the argument that my professor was having. And at the time, I couldn't remember the headline, that Cosmo headline, that, because she said, no one's arguing obesity is healthy. And I'm like, yes, they are.
Yeah, they are.
Yes, they are. And that's where, maybe if you spend too much time in academia and not enough time in the real world, you don't understand that perspective. And so I was extremely cordial. And again, I fully respect this professor, but not everybody, I'm me. I come at this not from just a biochemistry perspective, but I also have the geopolitical, the social. I weave all these into what I do because I think it's important in being an effective educator and clinician today.
I'm just going to, I don't know, I'm just going to assume with some things here. In suggesting that there's another place to go, there's another route to take outside of what everybody, this allopathic way of doing things, where you are given the option of radiation, surgery, and chemo. You're given those for something like cancer. That is the option that almost everybody's going to give you. And then here's the thing is that for people to hear that, oh, no, all that is just, it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you. It makes things really hard for people who are already scared out of their minds.
Right. The
fear factor. I mean, I think about it too, Jay, and I was going to, I guess I was going to save that for a night that we were going to do, but now that it just came up, like you think about going about so many perfectly healthy people who are, eating clean, active. They don't think that there's anything wrong. Then suddenly they get diagnosed with something, and then all of a sudden it is, all right, well, I've taken a hard line stance on one thing or another my entire life. Am I really ready to put my money where my mouth is? Because this could be the big dance here.
Right.
That's something that scares the shit out of people. And almost like when we talk about vaccine safety profiles and things like that, and we start talking about other issues that are going on with children after however many generations of these shot schedules getting bigger and bigger and bigger, the same thing goes with the kind of the lashing out that you get from some parents who don't want to even be suggested that choices they made out of nothing but love and concern for their children's health could have in some way backfired. It's a scary thing. They put us into this dark corner, and we just, I don't know. It's like, so if you ever had, God forbid, some sort of a diagnosis, you would never ever consider chemo, no matter how they said this is what you need to do.
No.
Never.
I mean, I've done the stats on the show. I was just looking at it while you were talking. I couldn't find the paper, but off the top of my head, I believe less than 5%. I think is the effectiveness of the standard of care. And I also I couldn't find that stat, and I will find it. But the cancer industry is set to eclipse $236 billion in 2024 in terms of profits. It's a profit-driven industry. And I'm not convinced that everybody, again, the sort of lower level cancer researchers are looking, but you listen to one podcast with Thomas Seyfried and listen to the frustration in that man's voice because his colleagues won't even consider his protocols, which he has written case studies on, and he has people alive today who the standard of care cancer doctors said would have been dead years ago. They're still alive today because they did his metabolic therapy, which consists of a whole bunch of different things. And he deals with glioblastoma, some of the most aggressive forms of cancer in the brain. And he's having wild success. So, two things. Cancer prevention is big, which is why I'm an advocate of things like fasting for autophagy, cleaning up your metabolic house. You're going to significantly decrease your risks. But standard of care has shown really, I mean, I always use this analogy. It's a nuclear bomb to an ant problem approach. It'll kill the cancer cells. Very often, though, they come back and they'll tell you, the cancer's gone. Oh no, it came back. Seyfried says it was always there. It was always there. because you're not really addressing the problem. So again, he could speak to it, far better than I could. But to answer your question, no, I wouldn't. I already have in my head a list of things that I would probably do, and most of them are Seyfried's protocol and a few other things. If I was ever put in that position.
Have you ever spoken with him?
No, and he's at Boston College too, which is right around the corner. So I've considered.
You're going to have a brand soon, Jay. I mean, you're building it already up, but you're going to have a brand sooner than later that you'll be able to gain an audience with him.
Yeah.
Especially if you keep doing your own. I know that you do some podcasts on your locals now and things like that. You upload audio and whatever. I mean, that would be amazing to hear a conversation between you and he.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, part of me wants to introduce him to you, and see, I just think that message is so incredibly important. And in fact, when people come to me asking me this question about cancer, he's the first place I go because he's had such wild success, and it's always been in the back of my mind even before I knew about him. And then randomly one day in grad school, my pathophysiology professor pulls up a Thomas Seyfried lecture. We're sitting in class and my professor pulls up a Thomas Seyfried lecture, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? And I had already known about the mechanisms in my head because I understand the biochemistry. I understand the Warburg effect, which is how cancer cells, what they use as a fuel source. And so his whole theory is we deprive the cell of its fuel, not allow it to replicate, and then we're able to, instead of, again, the nuclear bomb to an ant problem approach. And so he's just a fascinating guy, fascinating listen. He's an older guy, so what I love about him is that he doesn't pull any punches. He straight up talks about the cancer industry the way I think people should talk about the cancer industry, that it's for profit and they're not really interested in what he has to say, which is really, really damning.
Speaking of the cancer a little bit more and about shifting standards, at least socially and everything like that. Now, I know that you are, just from all of the work that we've done together now, I know that you're fine with dairy as long as we're talking raw, raw dairies, cheeses, things like that. But regardless, you have to. These are billboards that have gone up all over. I don't know which parts of the country, but they've been popping up. And I had this sent to me, and then I went out and I found some articles that were covering them. And at least some people are starting with this. And we know that, okay, we say it's an outlier. It's a small little group of people. Maybe they're animal rights activists or one thing or another. They're vegans. They're crazy. Whatever the hell you can think, it always starts off with small things, and then it becomes bigger and bigger. So here is the headline. Oh, no. Here's the billboard. Now, we grew up with generations of got milk and milk does a body good.
That's real?
And this billboard right there, winners don't drink milk.
Wow.
You're a loser if you drink it, Jay. So here's what was attached to this. Research shows that dairy products, including milk, increases prostate cancer risk, recurrence, and mortality. High intakes of dairy products, including whole and low-fat milk, increase the risk of prostate cancer, according to meta-analysis that looked at 32 studies. In another study, men who consumed 3 or more servings of dairy products a day had a 141% higher risk for death due to prostate cancer compared to those who consumed less than 1 serving. Drinking milk also increases breast cancer risk. A study found that women who consumed 1/4 to 1/3 a cup of cow's milk per day had a 30% increased chance for breast cancer. 1 cup per day increased the risk by 50%, and 2 to 3 cups were associated with an 80% increased risk of breast cancer. There's 2 more small paragraphs that go along: asthma, cognitive decline, heart disease, early death. What the fuck? What kind of milk is this?
Okay, so
is it real?
Yeah. So here's the thing. This is the thing about nutritional epidemiology. The key word in all that jumbled mess is associated with. That tells you nothing about causation. These are they're called epidemiological observational studies. And what they cannot do is create an arrow of causation. They cannot say one thing causes the other unless they took people, had them drink milk, followed them, and then figured out, and so it might shock your audience to know that I would have to look at the individual studies, but I have seen food frequency questionnaires are generally how they determine what somebody ate or drank. And very often what they'll do is, depending on how long the study is, I've seen some studies that will go on for 10 or even 20 years, and they will only send you a questionnaire once every year, once every 5 years. One study I saw over 20 years sent one in the beginning, one in the middle, in other words, a decade later, and then one at the end, 2 decades later. And they're asking you in those food frequency questionnaires to tell them, how many cups of milk have you drank? I mean, these are beyond useless. Beyond useless. Anybody that has a scientific background understands that these epidemiological studies, especially for nutrition, one of the most highly regarded epidemiologists in the world, one of the most cited in the world, John Ioannidis out of Stanford, is notorious for saying these studies are why nobody trusts nutritional epidemiology, because they can show you can find a study that will show you an association between everything. And I think, again, on this show, I've said to you before, there are websites that are devoted to these sort of spurious correlations, like the divorce rate in Maine is associated with the amount of margarine consumed, right? These things have nothing to do with each other, but they correlate well in a graph.
Right.
And that's what they're doing here. So that's sort of the baseline thing, right? I just want to, and then what you would have to do is figure out, first of all, as you said, who funded the billboards, who funded the studies, because that doesn't mean the study is poor quality automatically, but you certainly need to know that, because I have seen studies where the Canola Association and every single author is employed by the Canola Association of Canada, and lo and behold, they find canola oil is a fantastically heart healthy oil to consume.
Yeah.
So you do have to consider the funding source. So this is how I break down literature. If you want to know how to do it, that's how you have to do it. You have to understand, first of all, what kind of study it is. You have to look at, very often you have to look at the appendix to figure out where the data, the raw data, is coming from. So forget about their increases. Are they using relative risk? Are they using absolute risk? I mean, these things are so important because they can make everything look scary. In other words, if something goes from 1% to 2%, that's really only a relative increase of 1%, or it's an absolute increase of 1%, but it's a relative increase of 100% from 1 to 2.
Right.
So those numbers, they can manipulate them to make them sound incredibly scary, and that sounds exactly like what they're doing there. Again, not having ever, you just mentioned this to me now, I haven't even looked at the studies, but I'm going to guess from the wording that you were using, just from the wording, I can tell what kind of studies they were. So that's incredibly important. So yeah, I mean, what I would say is to put very little stock in any of those associations at all until you can put people in a laboratory and you can actually test these outcomes.
Yeah, and I'm always very interested, especially in the last couple of years, as where I'm getting dairy products. Mm-hmm. As I just put in the chat room a couple of minutes ago that I have to go pick up in a couple of days. I pick up another delivery from the Amish. I've got my, not only the raw milk, but the raw chocolate milk, because Aurora enjoys that. Mm-hmm. And then there's the, and then I love their baby Swiss cheese. I love, a few other things there too. So, I mean, that is, but of course, that farm, you know about them.
Oh, yeah.
You have probably gotten the emails too, where assurances come in every once in a while. If there's ever a vaccine or mRNA push, we will never be vaccinating our cows. We're never going to be pumping them through this and that. So you know that this is clean product. You know that these are healthy animals. They're grazing. They're outside. They're not. I look at to say, oh, stay away from the milk. Obviously, this is saying it for another reason. I'm skeptical about most milk that you can pick up, a quart of milk that you pick up from a Cumberland farm somewhere, because I'm thinking about antibiotics, or, I still need to know more about the pasteurization process or homogenization. I want to know what's the claim and what does it really achieve?
And I will tell you now, I'm not even a big milk drinker. I much prefer fermented dairy. I think it's just a healthier product. However, the sourcing does matter, raw does matter, and the Amish farms where I get mine from and you get yours from, considerably different health profile. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I don't know if you saw the other day on Instagram, I reposted one of my own posts from 2 years ago that was actually, and so it's funny, it's going to tie in a couple of threads here. This was a 2011 study in nutrition and cancer. And they were looking at an Amish cohort in Ohio compared to a non-Amish cohort. And even though the Amish consumed more overall calories, more saturated fat, less polyunsaturated fat, which is those vegetable seed oils, less vegetables in general, they also consumed less alcohol, they smoked less, less low-fat dairy, so they were eating full-fat raw dairy, and they all obviously ate more of their foods at home. Their cancer rates were almost half of non-Amish people. So they're essentially anti-dietary guidelines, and they're consuming plenty of dairy right from their cows, and yet in terms of cancer, and remember, these populations, these Amish populations, unfortunately, they're not unadulterated anymore, right? Like Western food, Western society has invaded their space. So they're not even a pure cohort anymore, but even that being the case, in fact, I have seen, sadly, some Amish farms sell products that have things like canola oil in them, which just goes to show you that even the messaging is so powerful that it's even penetrated some of these people. But even so, their cancer rates were almost half that per 100,000 in Ohio. So they were even geographically similar. So if you're talking about environmental exposure, it would be similar. So I just thought that was an interesting study, and it goes to show you that, again, all the foods that we're being pushed away from, what do they all have in common? They're all natural foods. Now, again, a version of milk in the supermarket, most of it being stripped of nutrients and pasteurized depending on what the temperature was. So there's a whole bunch of different temperatures for pasteurization. But raw milk, raw dairy in general, incredibly beneficial. And I pulled one study just to kind of complete the conspiracy theory, if you want. This actually was... So obesity has a negative influence on male fertility, and weight loss promotes male fertility. Milk improves fertility in both men and women, according to this 2021 paper in the journal Nutrients. And so my question to you, Frank, I think when we talked on the phone earlier, was what are we replacing the milk with? And usually it's something like a soy milk, which has something called isoflavones in it. Well, isoflavones have a negative impact on male fertility. So, if you want to look at the larger picture, things like mRNA, gene therapies, all of the foods that are lowering testosterone, all of the chemicals that are lowering testosterone, destroying fertility. Well, if you switch from regular milk, if you are a milk drinker, to soy milk, that could also be an issue with fertility, especially in males. So I would, without knowing anything about this story, I would say the push away from natural animal products is consistent. It's red meat, it's butter, it's saturated fat, it's dairy, it's all of this stuff. In fact, dairy and meat are two of the things that Mayor Adams of New York is going to start tracking because of their carbon footprint in the C40 cities. So
I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad you brought up, especially at the end there too, the consistency throughout all of those things.
Yes.
Because that is on a very substantive physical dietary level. Yeah. And then you start adding in the other layers that are all educational, psychological, pharmaceutical. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different things that are getting us to almost check out. We are checking ourselves out of all of the natural cycles that we were supposed to be engaging in through instinct to continue our species.
Yes.
We're having our diet and our behavior altered, our mind altered through education, through media, and through pharmaceuticals, and we are just checking out, it seems.
Well, and let me go back to that paper because I want to give you this ties in the sort of toxic masculinity initial part of our conversation from the same paper. Now, this was not observational. This was interventional. In other words, they gave some people a placebo, they gave other people milk, and this is what they found, that ingestion of high-protein dairy milk post-exercise and pre-sleep during a 6-week resistance training program augmented lean mass, strength, power, and altered serum concentrations of skeletal muscle regulatory markers in trained young males compared to placebo. So milk really does do a body good, and what I would say is that's even they're probably not using raw milk in this study. So even your supermarket milks, which I would not really consume, just goes to show you that even those can improve strength, performance, skeletal muscle mass, all of these things that are very, very tightly correlated with longevity. So I'll say again, men in general, I steer them away from soy. I don't find very many benefits at all, if any, I don't consume any soy in anything. And if you're going to do dairy, do real raw dairy. And if you can't get raw dairy, then do things like kefir and yogurt, because at least those are fermented and they're going to be a little bit better for you. I don't really think milk is a necessity. I have it every once in a while when I get it raw from a farmer, if I just feel like it every once in a while. But mostly it's kefir is in my refrigerator all the time, and yogurt is in there all the time as well. So.
Well, keep in mind the C40s, because let's get the C40 City thing done as soon as we get back from intermission.
Sure.
And then we'll do that and a couple other things, and then we'll just jump into all of the super chats that are coming in and take calls if we have time. But there's good stuff. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. It's another night with Jay Gulinello. It's as awesome, as smooth sailing as I knew it would be. So we'll be right back.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out to press the like button. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome. Quite frankly.
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 Quite frankly. Quite frankly.
We all support quite frankly.
Not quite.
Quite frankly.
Let's go, Brandon.
Quite frankly in Roma, Italia. Quite frankly. You going on Frank's show tonight?
I want to get a Coke. Can I get a Coke?
So everybody watch. Quite frankly. With Frank.
Quite frankly. How dare you?
The show, but especially like the show, it's almost like lighting a candle. Please, it takes nothing and it helps out a lot. Also, remember to write down, submit timestamps for highlights to be made. Help me out, help out the whole crew over here. Timestamp spotters are so important. So please, you can tag us in those on the Quite Frankly Gilded chat. There's the Quite Clippy room. You can just tag me anywhere, or you can send it into email and I'll pass those along to our video mensch, Al Gorbachev. So there you go. Thank you so much. Jay, there's a few things here. What the hell I was going to say?
I like the name Quite Clippy.
Quite Clippy. I know.
It reminds me of that little paperclip on the side of Microsoft Word back in the day.
Clippy helps you get through your first term papers. Oh man, I forgot about Clippy.
You're so cute.
Hey, let me ask you that. You were talking about the rates of cancer that were being studied in the Amish communities. Well, I saw quite a stir on the internet the last week and a half. They're talking about metabolic situations too, but learning disabilities, things like that, where this people got a lot, up in arms when they said, hey, that autism is barely non-existent, is pretty much non-existent in Amish circles, and of course that leads to why, and people just don't, very uncomfortable conversations, but they're happening. I don't think they like that there's a control group out there like the Amish.
They do not. No, the first rule of pharma: destroy the control group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read that either. I was meaning to, and that's actually the exact study that spurred me to repost that post that I did from 2 years ago, because I thought it was so interesting when I originally posted it, because I didn't even know there were any studies done on the Amish, and I think that's probably why they're being infected by Western food, because they don't want the control group. Because quite honestly, in my opinion, autism is multifactorial. It certainly has to do with an obscene amount of a CDC schedule. And by the way, not to get too off topic, but I mean, the CDC, what are they doing lately? Did you see the headline recently about males being able to breastfeed?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so this is the CDC. You wonder why the public has no trust in them. They are at odds with reality now, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. So God forbid we ever actually need them for something, Frank. Nobody is going to trust them. They are the little CDC who cried wolf. That whole thing needs to be, burned to the ground, not literally,
No,
figuratively.
literally. It's all figurative.
Broken down to the studs, whatever however you want to, and we need to start over. I mean, they can't continue on this trajectory. And so it makes you wonder, well, we also know from RFK Jr., they've never tested the entire childhood schedule. They've never tested those against each other, just like they don't do with food additives. They'll test them individually, but they don't test them in conjunction. Well, if you're taking them in conjunction, you must test them in conjunction. So, I mean, this is the thing. These people wonder why the news, they bemoan the fact that Americans don't trust these governing bodies. This is why.
Well,
this is why.
We started this show off with a ranting, raving lunatic who's just the head of a teachers union. I really think that, for all of the morons out there that talk about late phase capitalism, this is late phase of any society. And that kind of craziness that is on display, like we saw with the teachers union president, is on display in just as flamboyant ways and in other more subtle ways in CDC, in institutions all over the place. I mean, it's the same mentality. Yeah. And then once they start losing people completely, that's when the histrionics come out, and that's when they start beating their chest and speaking as if they're Gandalf or something. I don't know what it is.
Well, she didn't. I mean, I didn't hear the word writing, reading, or arithmetic in that whole insane rant. It reminds me of that Billy Madison. And at no point did you even come close to something resembling a coherent thought. We were all dumber for having listened to you. That's what I thought of when I was listening to her.
And she dictates down to an army of teachers.
Right. So yeah, I mean, pull your kids out of public schools.
But to your point, we're talking about, it's never disconnected from what you see at the CDC.
No.
I mean, for anybody there to be taking on any kind of a role that is in some way, shape, or form medical, or I don't know, whatever, regulatory in any way, shape, or form, and you're there as a primary function, make sure that people stay safe.
Right.
And you're going out there and suggesting that men can breastfeed.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So I mean, what you're displaying is an unwillingness to connect to reality. How the hell are you going to assess anything else rationally?
Well, right. I mean, and when we saw what they did the last 3 years of complete irrational behavior. I love those memes, and I hope people continue to do this because it's so important. People like to put COVID in the rearview mirror, and trust me, I wish we didn't have to continue to talk about it. But in some ways, we need to continue to talk about it because the next one is right around the corner, and we cannot forget what these people did in the name of science. And I feel, as someone who was studying science and then graduated with a master's degree in science, in the middle of all that, I was quite embarrassed to say I have a master's degree in science, for whatever that's worth anymore, because science was completely thrown out the window. So it's really important that we remember these things. And it's just, you're right, it's a symptom of a larger issue. And I know you had Mickey Willis on recently, so you saw Plandemic 3. Brilliant piece. I mean, just love the way he outlined it from start to finish, using the sort of G. Edward Griffin, right, who you've also had on the show, which was a great interview. So I think it's all of these worlds are starting to collide, and then it makes you realize, as you said, that almost nothing is disconnected. So yeah.
Nothing, almost nothing. Let's see. Okay, did you have anything before we go into some super chats?
Yes. I'm sorry. I found that paper. So this is from 2004, Clinical Oncology. The overall contribution of curative and adjuvant cytotoxic chemotherapy to the 5-year survival rate in adults was estimated to be 2.3% in Australia and 2.1% in the USA. So I just wanted that was the paper I was referencing from before.
Okay.
2004, so it's 20 years old now, so maybe things have gotten better, but not that much better.
Well, here's our first question of the night. This is from Gina from South Carolina. And Gina says, I was at peak health in 2015 when I was diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer. I concluded it was from tucking my cell phone in my bra.
Oh.
I've seen a lot of that.
EMFs, yeah.
Yeah. I opted for chemo because of pressure from my doctor and family. Chemo wrecks your body and takes a long time to detox from it, she says.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, first of all, I'm glad you beat it. And now knowing Gina, knowing that her metabolic health is probably so much better even than it was back then, but that just goes to show you, right? The multifactorial approach. EMFs have a profound effect on the mitochondria, because if you understand the bioenergetics of the mitochondria, it's essentially a battery. So of course frequency is going to matter. Electromagnetic frequencies are going to matter to the functionality of the mitochondria. So over time, if you're damaging the mitochondria, the cells become damaged, and then, as I always say, the cells lead to tissue dysfunction, then organ dysfunction, and then eventually organism dysfunction. So I'm glad you understand that now, Gina. I mean, sometimes we have to learn things the hard way, and I certainly learned things the hard way. But, my job now is to try to get people educated and hope we can get them out of the way of the oncoming train.
Well, there's a lot of shuffling going around at my home right now, but when it's all gets settled in and we're all settled after months of work and stuff, that's one of the things that I'm going to do. I'm going to look into a lot of EMF dispersion. I'm also going to, for the first time, figure out how to put the Wi-Fi router on a timer so that it is off during sleeping hours.
Yep.
Just so that there's at least 7 to 8 hours where our bodies aren't getting totally. I mean, I understand it's coming from satellites. It's over all over. I don't know what the hell to do. Put the lead curtains. I don't know what the fuck to do.
Sleep in a Faraday sleeping bag.
Right. I'm going to sleep in a microwave. So, I do what I can, but I'm keeping those things in mind.
Well, Frank, that's the thing. You need to do what you can. None of us is going to get out of this alive, and also none of us have all the answers. So we just do the best we can with what we've got. So that's, you can get a kill switch.
Yeah.
So just one switch shuts that thing down at night, and then at least your most direct exposure is mitigated.
Yep, that's what I'm going to be doing. Let's see here. Ruben says, can you ask Jay his thoughts on drinking diluted food-grade hydrogen peroxide as a daily routine, and if he knows any benefits? Thank you.
Oh, boy. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
I know people swish and gargle with it.
Yeah, as an antiseptic, but...
I've seen hydrogen peroxide therapy, but I never knew how it was administered.
Yeah.
In a lot of natural cures books, and especially when it comes to cancer, because there's I forget what it was, an Italian scientist that brought it all back down to fungus, and it was a lot of hydrogen peroxide, baking soda. I forget what the hell it was. There's been just incredible stories that have been stifled over the years, whether they have merit or not. The fact that they're harder and harder to recall. I would love to hear about that whenever you get a chance to look into it.
It's actually produced in the mitochondria through normal cellular respiration as a reactive oxygen species. So it needs to be quenched by our body's antioxidant systems, but that might not necessarily be the same. So in other words, it needs to be mitigated. So my first thought would be, well, it's probably not a good idea, but that's not often how the body works. So I would want to, before I would speak on it, I would want to do a little bit more research.
Oh yeah,
great question.
Well, it's out there now. Stowstube says, Frank, always a pleasure to start a week off right with, quite frankly, but damn, what a bonus with the one and only Jay Gulinello in the house. Thank you, Frank and Jay. Thank you, Stowstube.
Thank you.
Katie Sky says, a lot of influencers have started... Watch out for those influencers, Jay.
I am never going to call myself an influencer. Please don't call me an influencer.
You work too hard to be called that.
I hate that term.
A lot of influencers have started citing studies that show that high-intensity exercise produce more autophagy than fasting does. How do you feel about the high-intensity exercise as opposed to ever-shrinking feeding windows?
Well, why can't we have both?
I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I actually do both. I do high intensity interval training but fasting has other benefits other than just autophagy. Multiple cellular systems are able to reset. Hormones are able to reset things like insulin. And we're designed, from my perspective, biochemically, we're designed to fast because we have multiple counter-regulatory hormones that are designed to increase blood sugar in the fasted state. But we only have one hormone that's designed to decrease blood sugar in the fed state, insulin. So that tells me that throughout human history, we've gone through far more periods of low blood sugar where these counter-regulatory hormones needed to stick around than we ever have now, which is why I think the modern food environment is very dangerous for us, that 24-hour food environment, because we've only got one hormone, insulin, that's designed to lower blood sugar, which is why hyperinsulinemia, that chronic elevated insulin is associated with so many pathophysiologies because it was never meant to be that high. So I would say I would love to see those studies, but I absolutely think HIIT training. Actually, I do HIIT training in the fasted state, so I actually combine them both literally simultaneously. But yeah, I'm a big fan of both, and don't see why we can't incorporate both.
What a thoughtful answer.
It's a great question.
Well, I'm glad, obviously I'm coming from a lot more of a shallow understanding of the whole thing, but the first thing I thought was, well, why not both? And in fact, I time my workout for the day. I mean, some days I do it a lot earlier if I go work out with Rob or something at the park or something. But if my eating window begins around 2, on average, I'm not eating until 3 now. And sometimes I push it a lot smaller. Mm-hmm. But I'll always time my workout for that 45 minutes prior to. So, I mean, I don't know. It's like with an hour leading up to my first meal, I'm usually trying to kick ass.
Yeah, and I love fasted workouts. I have such the ketones in the brain, the cognitive aspect of a workout. Workouts are very mental for me. So if my brain is in it, then my workouts are better. And I would also say the ever shrinking eating window, because that last comment was really important. I don't think that you should be chronically shrinking the eating window to the point where you have a 6-minute eating window and you've got you know what I mean? So I could sense a little bit of the frustration with fasting, and I think that's where influencers come in. Sort of turning again. I always use the analogy of a hammer. A hammer can build a house or it can crush a skull. So don't blame the fasting for what the influencers did. Fasting is an amazing tool used properly, and I don't think it should be used chronically, and I don't think it should be used necessarily the same way for everybody. I have a large variation in how I use fasting.
Gina from South Carolina actually asked something similar. So said, can you talk about how you manage your fasting windows with your workout for optimal performance? So it's all
and if you want to build muscle, if you're trying to build muscle, gain weight, then I would say have some protein, a little bit of fat. Nothing too big, and maybe like an hour before you work out. You don't always have to work out in a fasted window, especially if you're trying to build muscle. But if you're trying to utilize body fat, then fasted workouts are great.
Katie Sky again said, could the gold that was just found in that guy's garden be Civil War hold that Shane Cashman was investigating before? I was going to ask Shane about that on Friday, because it's very rare that you hear anything about Civil War era gold that's actually found. It's usually people chasing legend, and suddenly this guy is stumbled upon hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gold.
I saw that. I saw you when you covered that story.
I know. I live for those kind of
That's
stories.
Great.
I just love them.
Yeah.
Matt Nice says, hey guys, wondering if Jay has any thoughts on the recent spike in thyroid conditions like Hashimoto's and Graves' causes and treatments. I can think of 4 women I know, all in their 30s, who have him.
The 2 things I think when I think of thyroid conditions are fluoride in the water, because that's essentially takes the place of iodine, which is incredibly important to make thyroid hormone. And then I also think of autoimmune conditions, which makes me think of anything that damages the gut, which makes me think of glyphosate and other herbicides that damage the gut, because there's a process called molecular mimicry where the body's immune system starts to turn on self. It has trouble distinguishing self from non-self. And very often, for some reason, the thyroid seems to be the first target. So I was always trained to address gut issues, heal and seal the gut, and then see if those autoimmune thyroid markers like Hashimoto's, if those markers come down after some time on a gut healing protocol. So those are the 2 things that I think. Fluoride in the water, make sure you're filtering your water, and make sure that you're doing everything you can to buy organic. That's why my diet is animal based. Glyphosate does not tend to accumulate in animal meat and milk, so that's good. But yeah, those are the 2 things I think.
Okay. All right. There's another one over here. Let's see. This is from Stickman Mike. Says, good evening, Frank. Since Jay is on your show tonight, I was curious as to what the verdict is on the mineral shilajit. I don't know. Have you gotten anything more on that?
So I found a really cool paper. So I have tried it, and the verdict is you should definitely try it. We talked last time about it's rich in something called fulvic acid. And so that essentially, some of the research is showing that it may be able to remove toxins from the body, but also blocks something called tau protein self-aggregation, and that is why it's being explored as an avenue for Alzheimer's research. So for people that don't know, it's a natural substance found in the Himalayas. It's basically plant deposits and microorganisms that have hardened, full of minerals. I've recently talked to a PhD who was all about it. He said it gives him a cognitive boost. So I would say go for it. See how you feel. See how.
It must be hard to test new things on you when you've already done so much to work on your optimal health. That, I mean, what kind of real fluctuations are you going to feel?
Yeah, I mean, it is, and I it sounds a little bit ridiculous saying that, but it's true. I really do experiment a ton, self-experiment, but I don't, because I have worked on my health and my metabolic health and cognitive health for so long and really obsess about my lifestyle and diet, very often the lights don't come on when I try a new supplement or something like that. So I rely on other people that I trust who maybe have a genetic SNP that makes them prone to something, and then they try a supplement and they go, wow, this really helped. Right. And so this PhD, he talked me through this, and he said, no, the stuff is great. He even turned me on to a specific brand. I bought it. He said it was very clean. I bought it. I tried it, and I didn't notice a huge difference. That's just me personally, though. But the research seems to really support its efficacy. And if you're worried about things like cognitive decline, or if you're thinking, I want to remove things like glyphosate from my body, fulvic acid and humic acid are two things that have been shown to do that, very rich in shilajit. So. Well,
the second half to that question is, secondly, how dangerous is high fructose corn syrup? We hear a lot about that. It's one of those substances that over the years they keep changing the name of it on the nutritional tab so people can lose track of it. Are we in aspartame sucralose territory with that again?
Not necessarily, although most of it is genetically modified, so that's a huge problem. And really, it's similar to sugar, although sugar molecule is half fructose, half glucose. The reason it's called high fructose corn syrup is because I think it's about 55 to 60% fructose, so it's a little bit more fructose than glucose. And, fructose is metabolized primarily by the liver, and an overload of fructose can be detrimental to the liver. You can actually get non-alcoholic fatty liver disease through massive amounts of fructose ingestion. So I would say this: if it's a super clean version, in other words, it's not GMO, it's not going to kill you. It's not the worst thing in the world. But by and large, high fructose corn syrup is going to be in a food that's going to contain a bunch of other things, and usually it's in foods that it doesn't need to be in. Like, you'll find it in a lot of ketchup. But there's really no need for high fructose corn syrup in ketchup, because there are brands out there like Primal Kitchen, or like when I get it from the Amish farm, that's just basically some spices, sea salt, apple cider vinegar, tomato paste, so it doesn't need to be there. So I would say it's not the worst thing in the world if you're getting the cleanest version, but what food is it also contained in? Because most likely high fructose corn syrup generally doesn't travel by itself.
Right.
It travels with other suspects that I would be concerned about. So better to just avoid it, because then you're avoiding ultra processed foods.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's just been a rule of thumb for a while, and whenever I see it, gone. I mean, it's only been the last year that I'm now looking for any kind of seed oil. Before that, I'm just like, oh, that's not. Oh, okay.
And remember, it's a 680-day half-life. So they incorporate into cell membranes, and that's the part I really try to get across to people, is that you can't just be a weekend warrior with those things. You've got to get rid of them. And the other thing about high fructose corn syrup is that, again, it just continues to train your body to demand sweet. It's in bread, it's in ketchup, it's in all these places it shouldn't be, and it just furthers that. I think it might create issues with satiety. So, as I continue to think about it, it's like, yes, the molecule of fructose and the molecule of glucose are not inherently dangerous to the human body, but the context matters.
Well, what is it that you said? You brought up a really interesting, I don't know if you can call it a biochemical or psychological study, where you put somebody in front of a gigantic plate of French fries, and if they were to, if they start becoming full, they would have a little bit of ice cream, and then all of a sudden they can eat more French fries again.
It was actually the exact opposite of that. Opposite? But yeah, you remember, I think, did I tell that story here?
I don't know. I forgot like what one sensation offset the other. What the hell was it?
Yeah, so that's the concept of palate fatigue and how the bliss point can override satiety. So it was an ice cream eating contest. This ice cream eating champion was eating ice cream. Eventually he got to the point where he couldn't eat anymore. So he ordered a plate of salty fries, ate a few of those fries, and just that shift in taste was able to then override his satiety mechanism, and he was able to go back and continue eating ice cream. And we don't even fully understand how that works, but the field of psychophysics is designed to create these hyper palatable foods, and the sort of originator of that was Howard Moskowitz. So I can read you really quickly. Yeah. So palate fatigue is the feeling of boredom one experiences after eating some percentage of a large portion of food that has pushed their taste buds to the limit of tolerance for that same food. And so this is where Howard Moskowitz studies psychophysics, which is the relationship between physical stimuli and the sensations and perceptions they produce. And so he was hired to actually biohack soldiers in the U.S. Army to get them to eat more food, because caloric intake on the battlefield is incredibly important, and apparently the rations were very bland, and so the soldiers would not want to eat anymore. So the U.S. Army, after Moskowitz graduated from Harvard, the U.S. Army employed him to hijack soldiers into eating adequate amounts of calories, and he did this by this bliss point mechanism and by hijacking their dopamine reward system.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting.
That is very interesting. Yeah. And I had forgotten how in-depth of a story that was.
Yes.
And by the way, for anybody out there who, satiety, that's the feeling of being satiated. That's feeling of being full.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know that that's one of those things, one of those words that I was just like, what the fuck? The fuck is...
I know, I throw that around a little bit like everyone knows all the words, so I apologize.
No. I obviously, most people know, but for people who are just learning this, that's it's a basic one.
I actually love running into people who don't know those words, because that means they're here because they're truly curious. Like when someone comes up to me after a talk and asks me the most basic question, they feel embarrassed. I go out of my way to welcome that person in, because there are stupid comments, but there are no stupid questions. So I love when people are that curious, because I see the sort of curiosity in their eyes, and so I encourage people to do that kind of stuff, to ask those questions.
Well, I have a couple of Rumble rants here. 925 Wild G just says glyphosate. Yes, we've been talking about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, 925.
It's everywhere.
Is this the real life? Says, good evening, Frank and Jay. I wonder if Jay has any thoughts on reactive hypoglycemia contributing factors. Friend is experiencing that. Thank you both for all that you do.
Well, I'd need a little bit of background. Reactive hypoglycemia to a certain food, to a certain meal, to a certain medication. So that's hypoglycemia is when blood sugar levels drop.
Yeah. And
so reactive, I guess I would need to figure out what it was a reaction to. But it certainly is a real thing, and very often I see that in people who with either pre-diabetes or diabetes who struggle, their insulin response is so severe that it can cause reactive hypoglycemia. So it could be to foods. So for people like that, I tell them to get used to eating healthier fats, so that they can help switch their metabolism over to not rely exclusively on glucose, and then slowly drop the carbohydrates down to a level where those episodes diminish. But again, that's only going... I would need more information, but...
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it'll come in an email and I'll just forward it along.
Yeah, sure.
I know you do the best you can.
I know. I really try so hard. I feel if anybody out there that I have not responded to, it's not because I don't love you.
Hugh Jadick says... Hi, Frank and Jay. Question: while fasting, does taking amino acids or pre-workout supplements end your body's autophagy state?
Lots of controversy on that. I would avoid it, but the answer is nobody really knows, because there's not really a great way to measure autophagy outside of a clinical laboratory. There's all kinds of people that say, well, if it's less than 20 calories or less than 30, but really everybody's pretty much guessing. But if you want... So here's the thing. It depends on what benefits you're really looking for. If you're looking for that deep cellular cleanup, and part of that is protein turnover, then I wouldn't do that, because you want the body to find the damaged proteins, break them down into their individual constituents, which are amino acids, and then repurpose them. So you want the body to do that from its own store. So if you're taking branched chain amino acids or essential amino acids, you're sort of thwarting that process. But if you're just looking for the general metabolic benefit or the body composition shift, that's not going to really make a huge difference.
Okay.
So you see what I mean? Like there's different, you have different end goals, and based on those goals, I would make a different recommendation.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another one. The Shane B says, can Jay break down the difference between total sugars and added sugars? Is it just how it sounds?
Well, very often, if I understand this correctly, is total sugar is the sugar that comes naturally in the food, like if it's a dairy product like lactose.
So it sounds.
And then an added sugar would just be whatever they did, like high fructose corn syrup or whatever, to make it sweeter. So you want to avoid the added sugars as much as possible, because most food has some amount of natural sugars occurring.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's hear. This is what we're going to do now. We are actually making great time. We're not as overwhelmed as we usually are. And we have about 30 minutes left, so we're going to take a really, really quick breather, come back, and we're going to open up the phone lines. I'm going to get to some of these other super chats that are on the Foxhole, and I know the 29 minutes is going to go by in a flash. So 914-200-0269. Or 914-200-0269. Whatever the hell it is, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, I'm Robert Lee. I own Coleman Liquidation. I sell mobile homes. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to tell it just like it is. These are mobile homes, not mansions. They come in two pieces. If that's what you're looking for, that's what I got. They're used. Some of them have stains. We cover that up. She decorates them. She sells them. These guys help me move them. A bouncer in Birmingham hit me in the face with a crescent wrench 5 times. And my wife's boyfriend broke my jaw with a fence post. So if you don't buy a trailer from me, it ain't gonna hurt my feelings. So come on down to Coleman Liquidation and get yourself a home. Or don't. I don't care.
Recent polls have shown a fifth of Americans can't locate the U.S. on a world map. Why do you think this is?
I personally believe that U.S. Americans are unable to do so because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa and the Iraq, everywhere like such as, and I believe that they should, our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S. or should help South Africa and should help the Iraq and the Asian countries, so we will be able to build up our future for our children.
Thank you very much, South Carolina.
Catching lightning in a bottle to see that stuff back in the day.
And I have to give you credit. You know, you find some amazing clips, and you know, it's really a great part of the show is to see these new things pop up. And sometimes I'm gonna have to start making notes of them, because I just think, you know, on the shows that I appear on, they just make me laugh in between the breaks. People don't. I mean, I just think these things are hysterical, and I always think about you when they pop up.
They help. They really help. They help.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking about the other night. I wish that it was a little bit safer to do late at night. But when I have a couple, like maybe 5 to 10 minutes left, and I'm just not ready for bed just yet, and I've just finished working, shower's done, whatever, I'll sometimes lay down. I know that I don't have enough energy in my eyes to actually pick up another book and read.
Right.
But I'm just going to, because my eyes will go crossed and whatever. Then I'll want to throw up. So I'll go and I'll check out some YouTube shorts or some Instagram reels, and sometimes I'll just cry from laughter.
Yeah.
It feels so good to go to bed, but there are other nights that you get fed nightmares.
The algorithm is against you.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, there's no way to really go against it. You are fed nightmare fuel other nights. And I hate that shit.
Yeah.
But I love it. Those videos that are hilarious like that, irreverent and funny, they're like medicine. They really are. I mean, I'm talking literally too, because you can just feel your body, your biochemistry changing to happy, light, vibratory feelings.
Yeah.
It's definitely medicine.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, I sent you that clip because it actually reminds me of what we're going through today. And we talked about this offline, but that poor girl, when people don't know what to say, and I'm going to include politicians and influencers, everybody, they feel like as long as they say the right words, whatever the words of the moment are, that will carry them through as if the statement they made had some kind of substance. That's what I felt like. And if you really watch that clip again, when you rewatch the show, look at the very end as the time is running out. The buzzer has dinged, and the guy from Saved by the Bell is, about to, I wish he had saved her before, but he was about to, say, "Thank you so much, Miss South Carolina." She says, "For our children," she remembered that was the other thing, right? We all have to save the children. And when I think about things like C40 Cities that we're going to talk about, and I think about all these other things, I hear politicians pandering to the public in the same way. Now, she was doing it in a very innocent way because she was clearly petrified, deer in headlights, didn't know what else to say. But what's the excuse for our supposed world leaders for doing this? Because that's what I thought of when I saw her. I thought, she's like a less polished politician. That's what she is.
Like at the Tim Scott, Asa Hutchinson, all those people who are getting rung up by Tucker Carlson.
Yes, who asks the real questions like real people want to have answers to, and all they can say is, the talking points. There's no genuine answer. And love him or hate him, the one thing about Trump is he is his own guy. He is as genuine as the day is long with his answers. You never know what you're going to get. And that's why I think someone like even Ron DeSantis does not translate, because there's something robotic about him. There's something I don't know what it is. And it's undefinable almost. Yeah. But anyway, that's when I saw her, that's what I thought. I thought, wow, everything we're going to today, that's what I thought when I saw that clip. Just say the words and we'll get through it. Yeah. So
I should say, I mean, for example, somebody asked me, why do you think that people can't find so and so on a map? I'd be like, that's a wonderful answer. I mean, a wonderful question. I guess we would have to redirect all these questions to the federal agencies that are supposedly funding education that should not exist. Maybe we should
maybe we should fire that lady who was supposed to be in charge of educators.
Wonderful. Yeah. But that's the whole thing. That lady is creating I mean, she's part of the reason why we're getting just generation after generation of mumbling idiot. And I'm not saying that's what was going on with Miss South Carolina. That was a confluence of unfortunate.
Yes.
It's television. I hate those. For the time that I used to watch those, because we would watch those televised contests and stuff.
Sure.
And it's like, we were watching because there's a bunch of pretty chicks from all over the country. They're coming. It's like each state's hottest chick. It's whatever. We were stupid and young.
Yeah.
But I always thought that solve the world's problems right now. That was stupid. Okay. Yeah. Play the clarinet. Do the tap dance thing.
Right.
Whatever. Let's stop this.
Yeah.
So I always went easy on her just because of that alone. But yeah.
A great clip would have been to take the question that the girl asked and then immediately cut it with the ranting teacher person when she says, why do you think students today can't find, the United States on a map? And then you hear this teacher ranting and raving about something that nobody has any idea about. That's exactly why.
Yeah.
Because we're not teaching anything anymore.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if she went on a rant like that sometime today, the buzzwords she used would be a lot different.
Yeah.
She'd be talking a lot about equity and institutionalized racism And that's what it'd be: systemic this, systemic that, the patriarchy.
Well, speaking of that, so do you want to get into C40 Cities right now?
Do that, yes. And I'm so sorry I teased everybody with open lines. Maybe we can get one or two in toward the end. We got to get this. This is incredible.
So you might ask, Jay, what are C40 Cities? Because I certainly didn't know. So I'm going to read you just very briefly from their own website. And here's the thing about C40 Cities. Most people don't know what they are. When I was down in Tennessee, I took a little poll while I was on stage, asked people if they knew what these C40 cities were.
Did Jay Dyer knew?
He wasn't in the room at the time I took the poll.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but nobody raised their hand. So C40 cities, they are mayors. Now, keep in mind what we just talked about, Frank and I, about the buzzwords. C40 mayors work together across borders in order to protect people and communities everywhere and build a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. What the hell does that mean? What does that mean? Our work in this area helps cities to implement solutions to make it easier for people to eat more plant-based options. Well, there's another buzzword. And waste less food. Doing so will help reduce emissions, improve health and equity, and enhance climate resilience around the world. These are quotes right from the C40 Cities website. And so they focus on 6 factors, and they're going to monitor 6 factors of your life: food, construction, clothing, vehicles, aviation, and electronics. So basically everything that you do in life. And we talk about our mayor, well, not our mayor, but Mayor of New York City, Mayor Adams. He is now, because New York is one of these cities, is going to be tracking meat and dairy consumption for your carbon footprint. So Frank, if I go to my local grocery store and I buy too much meat and I'm using my credit card, or at some point, I know you want to bring up, the sort of, this is in conjunction with the push to a digital currency.
No doubt.
They could just say, hey, you know what? You've had enough meat for the week. And they go based on the Eat Lancet diet, which I believe, I did the math, allots 1.5 ounces of meat per day.
1.5 ounces of meat per day.
10 ounces per week, I think was I haven't done the math in a bit, but I recently did the math and I was blown away. So that's C40 Cities. And if you want, and so don't feel bad if you haven't heard it, because most people haven't. But if you're curious, I'll just do North America real quick. Austin, Boston, Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, Montreal, New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Portland, San Francisco, Seattle, Toronto, Vancouver, and Washington, D.C. And it's not just North America. It's Latin America, it's Africa, it's Europe, it's Asia, it's Australia, it's everywhere.
And this is all sponsored by the WHO? What is this?
So, as far as I've been able to find, now this is just really hard to research. I've been researching it for several months now, and I have not really been able to actually, there is a page if you want to. It's not World Economic Forum associated, but Open Societies is a funding partner. Let me see if I can find it. Funding and partners. Yeah, there's a lot of them here. Bloomberg, the UK government, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, some places I've never heard of before, IKEA, Open Societies, FedEx, Google. Yeah, so there's a lot of Novo Nordisk, which is the company that just produced Ozempic.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the Clinton Foundation.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people invested. The World Economic Forum is not, the World Bank is, but the World Economic Forum doesn't seem to be on here. But everybody else is, so.
So we're getting C40 cities, we're getting 15-minute cities, we're getting smart cities, we're getting digital currency, and they want to make sure that every major ecological footprint, so-called, that we that we leave behind is itemized and tracked in the most meticulous of ways. Yeah. And they say that this is all going to end in equity.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
So Frank, so this is why I'm so glad we're talking about this, because this is why I sent you that clip. This reminds me, when I gave this presentation in Tennessee, I think I said those words: sustainable, equitable future, plant-based, climate resilience, reduce emissions. None of that means anything. It is all complete nonsense because the data does not support it. So what they do often, and your audience will know this, but and I've actually heard you reference this before, but I don't think you actually use the term, but there is a scientific term for manipulating people based on emotion, and it's called the amygdala hijack. So that's the appeal to the fight or flight portion of your brain. If they make you afraid of something enough, you sort of the amygdala hijacks the frontal lobe, which is rationality, reason, the sort of higher evolved brain, and it disables that, and for good reason, because once upon a time, if a saber-toothed tiger was bearing down on your camp, you didn't want to sit there and go, is this really a threat? Do we actually have to, it's just react. And so the theme of all of this, whether it's COVID or climate change or whatever, I mean, you look at John Kerry. That man is beclowning himself on the world stage, but what is he doing? It's all fear. Scientists are afraid, and they're telling us all of these disastrous things. Meanwhile, he never qualifies any of that with, well, what scientists? You're using scientists as if they're one gigantic amorphous blob.
Yeah.
Not all scientists agree. And what exactly are they saying? They're scared? Really? Well, that's not a very good scientist. Scientists look at data. Like that, you're talking emotion. But if you notice, they're always appealing to emotion.
When they bring up scientists, like I know exactly what you're talking about with John Kerry too.
Yeah.
Because when they talk that way, I don't think of well-to-do, highly trained people in white coats in a laboratory milling around, checking their microscopes and putting solutions into beakers and all that shit. The first thing I think to myself is the Oracle of Delphi. I'm thinking about these. I don't know, these hooded people, these clairvoyant creatures that are just huffing the gases of a local lake in a cave somewhere and coming out with visions that need to be relayed to the rest of us by John Kerry.
Yeah.
I don't even see when they say the scientists say. I'm like, who?
Yeah.
Can I gaze into the mirror that you're looking into? It's just so weird. It's lost all of its legitimacy to me.
Completely. And because we have no media, nobody asks the question, Frank. We have no protection by the fourth estate. So in any normal time, the media is there to say, hold on a second. What scientists, where's the data, what's the claim? But I mean, the media is, disappeared. They are just a mouthpiece of the state, just like John Kerry is. And my fear, and this goes back to the health side of the equation, we have a dietary guidelines doctor. She's got more letters after her name than I've ever seen in my life. But what that actually tells me is that she has very little real world experience, because she looks like a very young woman. So what that tells me is that she spent her entire life in academia, which is a dangerous place, because you can so easily be indoctrinated with all of these thoughts. And so she goes on 60 Minutes and says that obesity is driven by genetics. That doesn't matter. You could have a great diet and a great healthy lifestyle, but if your parents are obese, you're going to be obese. And it's like, wait a minute. Well, first of all, that's not true. But second of all, why are you on the dietary guidelines then? If there's nothing we can do about it, why did Joe Biden appoint you to the dietary guidelines committee? But this is the problem. So I actually believe John Kerry when he says scientists are running around with their hair on fire, because some of them maybe have never left academia. So they don't actually go out there in the real world and experience what life is about. So I have I'm taking issue with academics and with politicians at this point, because they're all driving us towards this cliff, whether it's obesity, which is at unsustainable levels financially, but also unsustainable levels in general. I mean, we're about to 2035. The World Obesity Federation says half the world's population is going to be overweight or obese. Half the world's population. 2035, not that far away.
How's that possible, though?
I mean, I actually believe it, because I've been seeing these statistics. I found a paper from the Los Angeles Times in 2010 that was predicting this.
But that would mean that most of China and India and Africa are over. How are they overweight? I thought that we had the real obesity crisis over here in the West.
Well, we do, but I mean, they're catching up. I mean, Western food has. I mean, I think in certain areas of India, type 2 diabetes. Now they tend to be thin diabetics, but diabetics nonetheless. But yeah, I mean, that's and China has been rapidly increasing their percentage of obesity of the population.
You know what it is? It's all the mukbang videos. It's all the mukbang videos. All these kids sitting around in front of a webcam eating piles of cheese. Actually, it's not in China. It's not even cheeseburgers. The things that they do to food. I feel like there is not one thing that they eat in China that is not tortured first.
Oh man,
I don't even know what the hell these things are. It's just incredible, and I understand. Listen, I have my cultural blinders on here. It's whatever is normal around here is all I see as normal.
Sure.
So if I grew up around eating a giant snail raw, I can't.
At least it's a whole food.
Please. All right.
Nose to tail, but yeah.
Here. Okay. So here's a. Did we get everything out on that? I think we did.
Yeah. I mean, just be aware of this whole
C40.
push, and find. And my action item is you've got to find some local farms to be able to either pay cash or pay credit or whatever. But there's something called the Beef Initiative, which I just found out about recently, that they go and they find farms to put on this database. So just get out there and try to find some local sources of food, because if this C40 city thing really takes off the way these crazy politicians want it to take off, we're all going to be in trouble.
And it's only one front of it. When you even when you got in touch with me about it, you texted me and said, "Hey, what do you know about this C40?
Yeah,
the C40 city stuff?" And I thought that you were talking about C60.
Yes, I know. I'm like, no.
Carbon 60.
Yeah.
I was like, we can talk about carbon 60 if you want. 'Cause I used to take it, but I never had a good understanding that stuck with me about what carbon 60 did. And then he's like, oh, no. Go check out what Mayor Adams just came out with. And then I saw that, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
They want to track every ounce of meat that we buy. So, and they say, okay, well, use cash. Yeah, well, it just so happens they're testing out our new digital currency right now. So that's how much longer is that going to last for?
Right.
I got a couple of things. Another one came in from Michelle. Michelle here for you. Says, I was recently diagnosed with stage 2 cervical cancer. I have changed my diet to organic, raw, vegan. A naturopath told me to do the chemo and radiation because it's HPV related and won't respond to alternative treatment. Now, Jay, before you respond to that, we had another guest of the show, Sean Morton, and he called in. He told me that his cancer, whatever he was going on in his throat, he said that he was told, no, you just go ahead and get the radiation, get the surgery done, because it was viral, and that all the treatments, the natural treatments that there are out there, there's a difference between viral cancers and everything. I mean, there's a lot here when you get into the weeds of things outside the mainstream conversation, where there's only one problem. There's only one source of the problem, or maybe multiple sources, but only one solution. Once you get into the weeds of what we're talking about, then it gets into these little subcategories.
Yeah.
And so what do you think about this, what Michelle is saying?
So what I'll say is I would encourage you to look at Thomas Seyfried's research, and I would also say, because I just don't know enough about this is so niche and it's not really my field, but I just hope that the naturopath knows what they're doing, because this is, it's incredibly serious. And if Seyfried is right and cancer is a metabolic disease, then I would really want to address metabolic health. And I know nutrient deficiencies can come from vegan diets. So I have my concerns, but again, would not want to speak out of turn here because I don't know the case and I don't know the specific situation. But I would say, again, at least check out some of Seyfried's work, and maybe and he does respond to people, so you can actually even reach out to him, and he may say, you know what you're doing is the right thing, because it's not necessarily about being vegan or not. It's more about removing the fuel source, which is generally speaking glucose or a specific amino acid. So it would be one of those two things. But so I would just say, check it out, because it certainly can't hurt to have multiple opinions, right?
No, not at all. And the
best of luck.
I wish Michelle nothing but the best in her recovery.
Absolutely.
And please keep in touch with the show too. I'd love to know how you're doing, and I'm sure you're in good hands. Let's see. Doug Simi, thank you. Robert Sarnes, thank you. Boys Blanc, C. Blanche, Sean Joe, Witchy Poo, Hour 4 Cents, Witchy Poo again, Sean Joe, Witchy Poo. Rook Castle says, cancer is a metabolic disorder completely preventable and changeable, says Rook Castle. That's on Foxhole. Yeah. Witchy Poo, thank you. C. Blanche, NX17 says, hi Jay, I love your podcasts. Thanks. A lot of the people who hang out with me on Sunday, who are monthly subscribers of the show and sponsors, that's how I found out that you're doing this on Locals.
On Substack.
On Substack. So, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's perpetualhealth.substack.com, and I really want to start to push that, because the Instagram world, and actually the world of anything owned by Zuckerberg or any of the main platforms, you know this, Frank, it's like banging your head against the wall. But Substack has really started to take off. So surely follow me on Instagram. I try to be active there. But the more people are coming over to Substack, and I'm getting extremely active there. And so yes, so I always joke, it's not a podcast. It's basically real life conversations about whatever's timely in nutrition. So myself and a fantastic nutritionist out of Canada, her name is Daryl Bouchard, give her Substack and her Instagram a follow. She deals a lot with women and women's health issues. So the two of us just, she said, hey, why don't we just talk about some of these issues that come up? So we just recently did an episode on Ozempic. It's a big weight loss drug.
Oh, great.
So we do like these 20-minute, 25-minute hits. So they're easily digestible, no pun intended. You can listen to them on your commute to work or whatever. They're not long form conversations like this, but they're long enough to get our point across. We usually do it in 2 parts, Sunday, and then part 2 will be like on a Wednesday if there's a tail left on the episode. And we do it once a week, and it's been great. People have seemed to be really enjoying it, and we encourage people to send in questions, because if the topic is popular enough, we'll do a whole episode on it. And so we do a lot of general topics, and then we do some specific things. Like we did a whole thing on seed oils, which was really cool. We did a whole thing on glyphosate. So we really get to dig into the weeds. You get to hear my perspective. You get to hear somebody else's perspective. She's former military, so she's got a different background than I do. And it's just a really good back and forth, and I hope people will come over there. You can support me there financially. I do like a $5 donation, but you can also do it for free. I will always give everything away for free because I want this to be educational.
So I put, as I usually do, perpetualhealth.co in the description. Can people find your Substack through that?
Yeah,
all right, good.
Through the link tree and Instagram,
right,
but if not, it's perpetualhealth.substack.com.
Okay. So as long as I'm sending people on a path. Okay, good.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Let's see here. Witchy Poo says, is heart disease genetic?
So there's always a genetic component to everything, right? Because that's the blueprint of the human body. But there's a ton of debate about what heart disease actually is and what it isn't. This is a big rabbit hole. I'll tell you that the cholesterol hypothesis, the diet heart hypothesis, is most likely incorrect, and that typically what happens with heart disease is that it's inefficient mitochondrial respiration. It's damage to the endothelial lining of the arteries. That damage then needs to be repaired. Things like cholesterol, collagen, calcium, they are part of the clotting and repair system of the body. Those repairs eventually become thick enough where they form plaques, and then that progression sort of goes as we know it. So I would say that you can be genetically predisposed to heart disease, but air pollution, proper diet, proper exercise, all of these things can mitigate heart disease, grounding, things like that. These are all scientific principles that help keep the body regulated. So that's the best, like a nutshell, a literal conversation that could take an entire episode.
Okay. Yeah, there's other things here too that I don't think we're going to have time for. T. Cross says, question for Jay, how much does blood type factor into diet, exercise, and supplements? We've talked about blood type.
I'm not sold on it. I'm not sold on how much it factors in. But the professor who created the blood typing was a professor at my university, and he's got some interesting research, but I'm not convinced.
Okay. Witchy Poo 22, Alan Wrench, thank you guys and gals so much. I'm going to release the scratching over there, and I know that we have some fun that is scheduled on QuiteFrankly.tv after the show tonight, so make sure you stick around for that. Oh, Jay, I had another thing over here for you if we had some time, but I knew we wouldn't. They wanted to, who's most likely to smoke weed, and is it older NPR listeners? They asked. I have to have a marijuana conversation with you one night.
Okay, we also have to have an RFK conversation, because that's timely.
Yeah, we should do RFK. We should do cannabis. Well, the next time you come on, the first half we got to do the livestock, the meat, the ecological impact of meat farming, things like that.
Yeah,
versus
we want to put some of these C40 cities arguments to rest, and so we want to look at the we always talk about the health impact, but you're right. We should talk about the agriculture and the environmental impact of meat. I have a ton of research on that, and it would be really informative, I think, for your audience. If they're like, okay, I'm sold on the health aspect, but it's still bad for the environment, we should go over
Well,
that.
using this thread in particular that I have saved and immortalized, I've taken screenshots of it. It's an awesome thread from Twitter from years ago from a person that randomly blocked me.
I remember that now. I do remember
very
that.
Weird. Very weird. I found this thread on Tumblr once, and it was a thread of this woman who was taking somebody to task, and she didn't seem like a conservative or anything like that, but she just knew something about farming, and she was not on the bandwagon of all cattle farmers should be killed, and that it's nothing but a drain on the ecosystem, it's nothing but a pollutant and all that, and put this person to put everything to rest. And it's an awesome thing for anybody who doesn't know, and I want to go through this thread with you. And maybe we can do that in August. I got to find it out in August. You come in.
That'll be the perfect time. We can do that, and then that following weekend we'll have a barbecue together.
Oh, hell yes. All right, man. Well, listen, you already did some plug-in over there. perpetualhealth.co. You follow that link tree through to your Substack. You're still doing your thing on Instagram, though you're getting throttled over there. I'm sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. Well, yeah, on Instagram they can also get to the Substack, so that's you can find it there too.
Okay. Oh, wait, there's one more thing on, quite frankly, superchat.com. Matt Nice says, is Jay familiar with amino acid therapy to treat depression and other mental illness? Picked up the book, The Mood Cure, that goes into it, but haven't had a chance to really read it yet.
Only very little bits, but amino acids certainly play a huge role in neurotransmission, and so I'm sure the book's really interesting, and I'd love to hear a book report if when you finish it.
Okay, yeah. Well, I like to talk about.
I mean, amino acids are the building blocks of everything, so there's no doubt that they would play a role. I would put it that way.
I'm very grateful for everybody out there, and Jay, I'm grateful that you've made some more time for us tonight, and all the best to you and your work.
Well, always thank you for having me, Frank, and we have so much more to do, so let's do this again sometime.
Yes, it's essential for our life on this planet. So, and it never, ever really neglects what's going on outside, because as we say before, it's all connected. Yeah. And whoever controls food and water and air, they control the species.
They do.
And that's it. And of course, the mind, too. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you tomorrow night for a Tuesday night engagement with you at 7 p.m. It'll be a fun one. Please share this with anybody who has never listened to the show before. I think any Jay Gulinello episode is a wonderful intro to people who have never experienced, quite frankly, in its fullest. So, yeah, until tomorrow, have a good night.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Think about it, though, Tone. So weight loss.
AIDS? Nobody's got AIDS. I don't want to hear that word in here again.